You say, "I'm fine," before you even decide whether you are. Someone asks how your day is going. You smile, adjust your voice, and the answer comes out almost automatically. "I'm fine." Then you move on. No explanation, no pause, no invitation to look closer. But sometimes your face tells a different story for a fraction of a second. Your eyes drop, your smile disappears, your shoulders tense. Then the expression is gone, replaced by the version of you that knows how to keep everything under control. That tiny moment matters, because saying, "I'm fine," is not always a lie. Sometimes it is privacy. Sometimes you genuinely don't want to talk. But when "I'm fine" becomes your default response, even when you're exhausted, hurt, angry, or overwhelmed, it can stop being a choice. It becomes protection. And the strange part is, you may not even realize you're doing it anymore. The question isn't simply why you hide your feelings. It's why your brain learned that hiding them was safer than expressing them. You didn't necessarily learn to say, "I'm fine," because someone directly told you to hide your feelings. Sometimes, the lesson was much quieter. You cried, and nobody came. You tried to explain why something hurt, and the conversation quickly changed. You were upset, but the adults around you were already dealing with bigger problems, so you learned to wait. Or maybe showing anger made the room uncomfortable. Showing fear made someone impatient. Asking for reassurance felt like becoming a burden. Your brain is constantly learning from these experiences. Not through abstract reasoning, but through repetition. When I express this feeling, what happens next? If the answer repeatedly feels unsafe, disappointing, or exhausting for the people around you, your nervous system can begin choosing a different strategy. Hide it, minimize it, move on. This is where emotional suppression becomes interesting. It isn't necessarily a sign that something is wrong with you. In the environment where it developed, it may have been remarkably useful. You learned how to read the room. You learned when to stay quiet. You learned how to calm yourself down before anyone else had to. And eventually, you may have become the easy child, the one who didn't create problems, didn't need much, and could handle things alone. The problem is that a strategy can remain long after the original danger disappears. You can grow into an adult with supportive friends, a loving partner, and a completely different life, while your emotional habits still operate according to old predictions. Your nervous system doesn't simply ask, "Is this person safe?" It asks, based on everything it has learned, "What usually happens when I let someone see this part of me?" That distinction changes the story. You aren't necessarily hiding because you're cold, dishonest, or emotionally unavailable. You may be repeating a strategy that once helped you belong. And healing isn't about forcing yourself to reveal everything. It's about teaching your brain something new. Being honest about what you feel does not automatically mean you're creating a problem. The problem with always saying, "I'm fine," is not that you hide your emotions. You're allowed to have privacy. The deeper problem begins when you can no longer tell the difference between privacy and disappearance. You walk into work exhausted, someone asks how you're doing, and you smile. You argue with someone you love, then answer, "It's nothing." You spend the entire night thinking about something that hurt you, yet the next morning, you act completely normal. From the outside, you look emotionally stable. Inside, you're doing constant maintenance. Psychologists often describe emotional suppression as an attempt to control the outward expression of an emotion while the emotion itself remains active. You may successfully hide the anger, sadness, or anxiety, but your body still has to process what you're feeling. That creates a strange contradiction. You look calm while spending enormous mental energy trying to remain calm. And there's another cost. When you repeatedly tell people that everything is fine, you also remove their opportunity to respond to the real you. They can't comfort you for a pain they don't know exists. They can't respect a boundary you never express. They can't show up for a need you keep disguising. Eventually, people may even describe you as easygoing. You might hear it as a compliment. But sometimes being easygoing simply means nobody has had to learn where your limits are. This can create a particular kind of loneliness, being surrounded by people who care about you, while feeling strangely unseen by them. And suppression can become exhausting in ordinary moments. You monitor your tone, edit your messages, rehearse what you really want to say, then delete it. You tell yourself it isn't worth bringing up. One small silence doesn't seem important, but hundreds of small silences can build a life where everyone knows the version of you that functions, and very few people know the version of you that feels. The mask doesn't always protect you from rejection. Sometimes, it protects everyone else from ever getting close enough to know what you need. The habit rarely announces itself as emotional suppression. It usually looks like being productive, polite, independent, or low maintenance. You open your group chat, see someone asking, "How are you doing?" You type, "Ha ha ha ha, I'm fine," even though you've rewritten the message 3 times because you don't know how much truth feels safe to reveal. Then you put your phone down and continue your day. You may do the same thing at work. You feel overwhelmed, but instead of saying, "I need help," you take another task. Staying busy gives you something easier to manage than the emotions sitting underneath it. Sometimes, productivity becomes a hiding place. You fill your calendar because an empty evening gives your thoughts too much room. You clean, exercise, study, work, scroll, organize, anything that keeps you moving, and relationships can make the pattern even harder to notice. Your partner asks, "Did I upset you?" You immediately say, "No." Not because you're certain they did nothing wrong, but because admitting that something hurt you feels like opening a conversation you don't know how to control. So you swallow it. Then you become slightly quieter. They notice something has changed and ask again. You say nothing. Now both people are reacting to an emotion that neither person is allowed to name. Over time, this pattern can even travel across generations. A parent who never learned how to sit comfortably with sadness may feel uncomfortable when their child cries. They might rush to fix it, distract them, or tell them to stop. The child doesn't necessarily hear, "Your feelings are wrong." They learn something subtler. Your feelings make other people uncomfortable, and that lesson can follow you into adulthood. You become highly capable of handling emotions, but strangely uncomfortable being witnessed while you have them. That is why changing this habit isn't simply about opening up more. It's about noticing all the tiny moments when you choose disappearance over expression. Because the biggest change may begin with something incredibly ordinary. Instead of automatically saying, "I'm fine," you pause long enough to ask yourself, "What am I actually feeling right now?" The goal isn't to become someone who tells everyone everything. You don't owe emotional access to every person who asks, "Are you okay?" The goal is to turn "I'm fine" back into a choice. Start with one small interruption. When someone you trust asks how you are, don't answer immediately. Give yourself 2 seconds. Notice your body before your mouth takes over. Is your chest tight? Are your shoulders tense? Do you feel irritated, tired, disappointed, or simply overwhelmed? You don't need a perfect explanation. You can say, "Honestly, today has been a little heavy." That's enough. You can also practice emotional honesty without emotional exposure. There is a difference between saying, "I'm having a difficult day," and telling someone your entire history. This matters because your nervous system needs new experiences, not just new beliefs. You say something small, the other person listens. Nothing terrible happens. You notice that. Then, eventually, you try again. Maybe you tell a friend, "I actually felt hurt when that happened." Maybe you tell your partner, "I don't need advice right now. I just want you to listen." Every one of these moments gives your brain new evidence. Expressing a need doesn't automatically lead to rejection, conflict, or abandonment. And when someone responds poorly, that doesn't mean you failed. It gives you information. Healthy boundaries aren't about becoming completely open. They're about becoming more intentional about who gets access to the real you. You can still say, "I'm fine," when you genuinely don't want to talk. But you should also be able to say, "I'm not fine today," when that's the truth, and know that you have the right to be heard. Because healing this pattern isn't about destroying the mask. It's about making sure you are the one holding it. The child who learned to stay quiet was trying to protect you. You don't have to hate that part of yourself. You simply have to teach it that you're living in a different world now.